We're live.
Hey everyone, I welcome you all to the Baseline Show. This is our General Assembly for December of 2022. This is going to be our final General Assembly for the year. And yeah, just like each time we bring together all of the leaders of Baseline Protocol to talk about the various developments which are happening in various working groups. And we're going to be at the end of the end of the show today, we are also going to be opening up the floor to hear people from the community, what they're doing, what's interesting them these days, and what they're working on. So yeah, without further delay, let me call upon Mark Haddle for updates on the outreach. Oops, I just realized Mark is not in yet. So yeah, he's gonna come pretty soon, I guess. Let's move on to another working group. Okay, Mark Rimsa, can we start with research?
Yes, I can. I think I should share my screen and
Sure.
give the community a better view on, or we could go to Mark Haddle if we want, since he's here now.
What?
Hey Mark, you just made it. I was on the other window and I announced that Mark is going to start with the outreach, and then I came back just to realize you're not in. So let's go to you with the updates on the final baseline show, and not the final baseline show, but the final General Assembly of the year 2022. Go ahead.
Well, and it's been a productive year. We actually got out there and started socializing at several of the events, to where people can find out what blockchain is, what it isn't, and how it can actually improve, certainly on process and operational environments, but how it can be an alternative to a blockchain implementation, because a lot of these more lighter weight use cases probably don't need something that robust. It's like trying to water your flower garden with a fire hose. I mean, yeah, it works, but it just it's way too much. So we've been working on that. We had presence, of course, at Columbia, also at FinTech DevCon. I wound up doing that one this year. And what we want to do for 2023 is to really increase that, and get the visibility out there. And really for outreach is we want to kind of shift to what can Baseline do for you, outside of just leading with the tech. We've got a lot of really cool tech and stuff, and we certainly have an audience that is really engaged on that, but we want to reach the people that really are like ideal in operation and risk and governance, and just whatever department that I have to keep tabs on and stuff. I really don't know what's going on under the hood, and now that you asked me, I don't care. I just want to push a button and know that it works. So we're starting to really kind of curate a lot of the content out there to engage that audience, to bring them in to say, hey, this is how you can do things that you're not able to do right now, but wish you could. You can interact with your counterparties and be able to have that interaction safe in the knowledge that all of your data is completely private, secure, and at rest. So that's what we're looking to do. And also, the news cycle has really kind of helped us quite a bit, because you've had a lot of high profile blockchain. I hesitate to call them failures. It was just they were not going to reach the finish line as originally envisioned or anticipated, really. TradeLens, of course, is one of the biggest ones that was out there. And one thing that TradeLens did was it demonstrated that enterprise blockchain can be done. It's just that implementation vision needs a lot more attention. As I think everybody was really obsessed with how much cool technology that we had, and and not so much as, hey, what's this going to do, and why do you want this, and why do you need this? So that's one thing that's really helping us right now. And so right now, another thing that we want to look at within, baseline, of course, is, some of the operational and business value aspects of baseline protocol. What is a cost model? What does it cost to actually set up and run a baseline implementation? What is going to be the budgeting that you're going to have for that? And I think we're at the phase now that we have the tech really developing on its own. We need to set a parallel track on the business and operational environments, which admittedly have not gotten the attention that I think that they deserve, because that's really the path forward, really for implementation and wider adoption. When you start to engage the business domain to say, hey, this is how you're gonna save money, make money, stay out of trouble. I mean, those are the three legs of the stool, and so that's what we want to deal with. That's me for outreach.
Thank you, Mark. Mark Windsor, over to you for updates on the research working group. And you wanted to show us some slide.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to show you some Chrome tabs, because I don't know if we've fully talked about what the research work group is up to. So can everybody see this?
Yes.
So the update for the research work group is that we've been researching or working on this blip1 issue, which is what you see right now on the screen. Everybody can find this in the baseline improvement proposals repo. This is where we work on different ideas that are supposed to improve the baseline protocol. And the reason why this issue was originally brought up is because a lot of people in the open source community were wondering, well, we know that we have to anchor things on chain, and we know that we need to prove things with zero knowledge proofs, but let's say we're on the business side of things and we're trying to map out a specific use case. How do we actually know when zero knowledge proof is adequate? How do we know if anchoring something is adequate? Or what if there are actually cases where we don't need to do one of them, or we don't need to do either? So this is where this research sort of issue was born out of. And since it's progressed quite a bit, I think I've mentioned in previous calls that we're working on requirements documents and things like this. So I wanted to give everybody a more specific idea of what this actually looks like. So I'd encourage everybody to take a look at this issue in the GitHub for an understanding of like a deeper understanding of what blip1 is about beyond what I just mentioned. But basically, this idea has been turned into an actual international supply chain use case, which is just a model example that we can use and sort of groom and go through and turn into a real user story that we can practice and start creating some patterns or decision-making models for ourselves that anybody can use when trying to make any sort of baseline implementation that allows them to make it in an easier fashion so that they don't have to sort of figure it all out on their own. Meaning a lot of these things like zero knowledge proofs and on-chain anchoring and DIDs and VCs, these are new things for a lot of people, especially for business analysts or other product people who are interested in creating trustless or zero trust ecosystems for business use cases, but it's hard for them to put all the pieces together and create a system for it. So this use case that we've outlined in blip1, it's been synthesized into this swim lane diagram, which shows all the different parties of this international supply chain process that our team, also in tandem with SAP, has been working through. And it shows all the different documents that are needed in a end-to-end international supply chain use case. The signatures that are needed, maybe whether there's anchoring, you can see this on the far right CCSM corner. I'm not going to explain all of this, but I encourage other people to take a look at this to understand a little bit more about the use case that we're working through right now. And to take it one step further, we've been able to take that use case and that swim lane diagram, and we've grouped it into a story journey, which details all the different, I guess from like a programmatic view, all the different objects that would be moving around in this system, and the properties that these objects would have, who's initiating maybe the creation of this object. In baseline implementations, baseline is, it's what's a good way to describe it? The processes typically have someone proposing a state change and then the other party, verifying it and then accepting that state change. So you can think of a lot of these objects the same way. Someone creates a catalog, it's initiated by some person, and then the other person verifies its correctness and then accepts it, and then I guess it becomes a real object, so to speak. So we've been able to take that use case and break it down into all these different objects. And finally, this has given our group the basis to create some more solid product or business requirements that we could start passing over to developers if they wanted to create a real working demo of a trustless international supply chain use case. And this is the current doc that the entire team is working on. This is our advancement predicates document where we're breaking down each sort of step of the user journey using all of the objects that we've mapped out previously into work steps, into baseline work steps, or workflows, depends on what granularity we think of it as right now. And we're breaking down each of these work steps into the actors, who's doing the action, what action is actually taking place. There should actually be an input to the work step, and then the output of the action, the verification of the action, and how that action is done, or the verification, sorry. So, here at step 0, this is where we generate a shared state, like you may be familiar with from reading the baseline standard. There needs to be a agreement, an MSA in place, which you could really think of as like a baseline state agreement. There needs to be a specific state that starts out between two counterparties. You can't just, start from nothing. So there has to be something defined before you can move forward and then, update state moving on. So that would be step 0. And then from there, if you have that MSA or that agreed upon shared state at the beginning, you can propose a purchase order. And then there are different ways that you can validate, whether it's anchoring, wrapping this object in a verifiable credential and verifying the schema, or creating a zero knowledge proof to verify parts of the verifiable credential schema, etc. So all in all, this is very important work, very exciting work. It's starting to provide the groundwork for folks at SAP or others in businesses to map out use cases that they're looking to create like trustless solutions for. It sort of bridges the gap between the developers who really understand the technical cryptographic parts of it, but the business analysts who sort of know what they want, but maybe they have a harder time defining it, and a harder time getting developers to build a specific solution for that. So this is Blip 1 for now. So I encourage anybody who's interested in this effort to please join. And if there are any other use cases that people would be interested in, any other businesses who are watching this live stream, if they're seeing the work going on with BRI 3, and if you can understand what we're doing with Blip 1 now, documenting, researching these requirements, please get involved and let us know if there's anything you want to do in the future with any of this research. So that's it for me.
This is very exciting work. Thank you so much for that detailed walkthrough, and I just loved it. The whole structure of that document, it just speaks volumes about the kind of effort which has gone behind putting this together. So big kudos to everybody who's involved in that effort. And yes, we should invite more and more people and companies to come and start participating in that effort. Pick this up and get going. And yeah, I'm going to fix up some calls very, very soon. Thank you, Mark, for that. Okay, couple of more updates to talk about. So there are events which we plan to attend in the year 2023 as well, and we have already started scouting for opportunities to take baseline, out and talk to more and more people and companies as well. So this is an open call. Anybody who's watching us and who would like to contribute any event ideas, just write to us or ping us on Slack. There's also a blog post which we recently published. It's called "The Digital Business and the Crossroads." So I encourage you all to read it and give us your comments on that as well. And now these blog posts are going to be fairly regular. There's also going to be a press release about the SRI work going on. So very soon we will all see that happening as well. Cool. Any other updates on the outreach, or are we good to move on?
Just stay tuned for blog posts. There are some very cool topics coming out. There's going to be a very cool one on the ZK EVM as the execution framework for the baseline protocol. So anybody who's been following the news about ZK EVMs, what they do, why they're important, stay tuned for that, because that's going to be a very interesting piece for anybody who's technically inclined or curious, and for all the other ones.
Yeah, there's a lot of curiosity about ZK EVM in the industry and people trying to prove things. All right, thank you so much for those updates. Really exciting work going on. I would now like to invite Yoav for core dev updates.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Samrat.
Again.
So first of all, just to kind of mention that a lot of what I'm going to discuss here is something that was discussed by the team, brought up and kind of worked through in the previous core devs calls, which happen every other Monday. So for anybody listening who wants to be kind of involved in the direction or the decision making or the technical actual like writing of code, that's a great place to start jumping in, join the calls, get involved through that. So with that being said, kind of the major topic for the SRI work in particular is the integration of the DID authentication flows. So just to kind of recap where the team's at, what we've been talking about and looking into. Currently, there is a draft for this authentication flow. And that draft was made by Scosito and team, and it's using node packages, specifically did JWT and Ether did resolver. And it is using the did Ether method. This is because the MetaMask needs to be able to sign the UUID and pass it along to address, pass along the signature and the address to the auth endpoint. So with those kind of did methods, the team researched between SideTree and Veramo to did identity solutions. The team were considering like which of the two would be most appropriate for our implementation. Currently leaning more towards Veramo because of kind of better compatibility and the support that would be available to us from the Veramo development team. With the current draft that's being presented at this moment, it isn't currently utilizing either of them. The node packages that I mentioned did JWT and did Ether did resolver are at the moment kind of enough to do what we need it to do without adding any additional overhead and libraries that would kind of slow things down in a way that aren't necessary. So that's where the did authentication is. That's kind of a recap of what we discussed in the core dev call and what we've been working on in that space, including that. And also, other than that, there are several open PRs for the SRI, authentication cleanup, ZKP APIs, and the did auth draft that I just spoke about. The ZK OpenPR and the auth OpenPR have requested changes that the developers are still implementing. But otherwise, the team of maintainers are reviewing and kind of adding whatever they see necessary in the comments in order to get those things pushed in. Milestone 2 has been complete. It's got a payment request that has been closed. So kudos to the team who made sure that that was able to be taken care of. The timeline for milestone 3 is to be complete potentially by the end of this year, but more likely early January 2023. So that's where the team is kind of wrapping up the end of this year. And I think if I can hand it over to Ognan to talk about the milestone 3 and what's left for the year.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that overview. And I would just like to correct you. We will be trying to wrap up the milestone 3 by the end of the year. There was a lot of preparation work that's already been done, especially as you mentioned in the field or component of authentication together with DIDs, but also with messaging and with work grouping or setting up the work groups. So now we need to go into the execution mode, and this should be moving a little bit faster, hopefully. As I mentioned, milestone 3, the idea is to try to have, once that is done, to have a reference implementation that can be, that you can have everything set up where you can then start exchanging the state and working on the state. So that means API subject, that means workgroup, that means messaging channels. And as soon as it is done, the next one would be trying to implement a really reduced, simple use case of state exchange, which is going to be the subject of milestone 4. As you already mentioned, currently we have open authentication, first authentication and then DID authentication PRs. It should be merged relatively soon. The ZKP API and the first instance of zero knowledge proof mechanism, to call it like that, it's also open and should be merged soon. And there is a number of open issues. If I can share the screen quickly. There is a number of open issues where we discuss various implementations that are going to be subject to execution soon. Maybe a good example is the we can go with authentication, for example. So if you jump in, sorry, just to find the link. Let's try authorization then. So each of these issues should have a document where you can track the overview of the standard and what's mentioned there, what are the needs, and then our discussions on how to slice it and how to implement it in the best possible and MVP fashion. So if anybody is willing to affect how the SRI is going to look in the end, this is a good place to start if you're coming from the business side, so to call it. And if you're a dev and are interested to join these efforts, again, our agreement is that once we have a document which is set up, which explains, for example, how should authentication work in this iteration, we split it into issues, and then these issues could be picked up by anyone. As for example, we have issues as small as these, where it's really just one line of code. And we strive to have them as small as possible so that anybody can join. Somebody already mentioned the core devs meetings, which are every Thursday. This is also a good place to jump in and get up to speed and maybe talk to the dev team to see what could be, what's a good candidate to be picked up. And I think that covers the current efforts. If there are any questions, I could pick them up now.
Just to just to correct a little bit there, the core dev calls are Monday, and then the SRI specific work group calls are Thursday.
Sorry, yeah, you're correct. I was thinking about the SRI specific calls. It's again open to everybody, and everybody can join to see what the dev team is talking about.
Definitely.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Joao and Malcolm. So, Andreas, do you have any updates on the core dev side?
Do I have updates on the core dev side? No, but I think what would be interesting to talk a little bit about is the ZK prover system that the SRI is going to employ, and why this was chosen for the beginning, and what are the plans to expand that, because we're all about zero knowledge.
So it's too bad that she is not around to jump in, because she's most up to date about the topic. What I can say is that the last agreement that we came to is that we are going to try to use this SRI as how do you call it, a common frame of reference, where we basically take a snapshot of a state, and we can place it on chain, and then we can verify, any system of record can verify that that snapshot existed and went through the SRI. So you can think of it as getting a bunch of historical snapshot of state changes that you can verify. You can verify every part of the process, and this is basically done through hashing, through creating a Merkle tree out of a document, all the properties, getting to the root, and then storing that root somewhere on chain. But this is just the beginning. We are building really in iterations, so the MVP is extremely simple, and then on top of that we can add more complex use cases, having in mind that we are trying to get something to production quickly, and we don't have to have a feature overload, so to say. Maybe just to add a little bit more about the actual milestone tree. So if you jump, if I can share the screen again, if I can steal just like a minute of your time. If you jump to the grants, you have the explanation here of each milestone in a little bit more details. And so the second one was really the CRUD operations and the application architecture and all that. And now with this alpha, we want to be able, as I mentioned, slowly to have the concept of the BPI subjects accounts, and the BPI accounts implemented together with the DID, so that you can have organizations that can actually interact with the BPI and have places from which they can later on trigger transactions, and also that they can create work groups, they can invite other people to work groups, and start agreeing on what are the workflows or the business rules that are going to be part of that work group. They will be with really limited set of features. So all the security and privacy policies are going to be set to default. So basically one use case, but that's subject to change in the following milestones. And then the last thing is to enable messaging between them. So direct messaging between the parties, that's of course out of the scope. That's between them to agree on. But to have messaging through the BPI, whenever there is an event that they might be interested in, that they can later on react to. And for each milestone, we have acceptance criteria, which is set. And it usually revolves around, in this early stages, around you have a bunch of tests, you can run them, and you can manually test the app via Postman through the API. And so it goes the same for the next milestone. You will be able, as you can already do now, if you jump quickly to, sorry for that, if you jump quickly to the repo, you can jump into the examples folder and the implementation, which is the BIRI3 folder. And if you just follow the README basically from scratch, through using these commands, you can already start the tests, and you have a folder inside where you have the Postman collections that you can use to try to trigger endpoints, and you can play around with it. And once milestone 3 is done, you will be able then also to create the subjects and do everything that I mentioned previously. As we move forward towards a complete product, we will be start introducing also end-to-end tests that are going to simulate user behavior, and are then planning to try to somehow get this closer to business people, meaning to try to create a dummy UI where you could play with an instance that's already deployed and things like that. But that's for future. Thank you.
Excellent, Onion. This is actually a great segue to sort of like the outlook for 2023, which is beside completing BRI 3, it is then to take that puppy on the road, right? Which means is to visit businesses and showcase BRI, how it works, and blog about it, do webinars about it. Mark Haddle looking at you. There's a heavy workload coming your way, my friend, a lot. Right. Because you looking to you to organize all of that. Okay. That's one. So that roadshow. Hopefully we can get some organizations also to sponsor that. And then we will also have, because we'll have now then actually several working reference implementations. We will do an interop fest, either Q2, Q3 of next year, with that allows to showcase interoperability between these reference implementations, which is again key in order to get business buy-in, in order to avoid vendor lock-in for this approach. So I think that is going to be key, and we're intending to do that with actual companies, with actual things. So we're tossing around a couple of ideas. One thing that I really like, because it's relatively simple but has high impact, is agreement on foreign exchange rate. Why? Because that's super important for international supply chain, or anything that crosses a border, really. When you're when you're paying in one currency that's not your own, then you need to make sure you agree upon exactly what time and what exchange rate to use, and there are different approaches. And if we can generate basically a data oracle there, that would be a great case to showcase how we can cross multiple reference implementations to come to an agreement on that. So that's the outlook for sort of like the two big things for next year, besides obviously any other type of cool ideas that come along the way that people want to work on and put grant requests in, which is, it's like shout out to grants. There's still a couple of open grant requests, and we'll talk about that when we talk about grants.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andreas. And yeah, this is exciting stuff. So I'm going to start off with the TSC update, and I'm going to invite you in a bit. So two focus areas right now. One is, of course, what we've done is, as we had promised this time around, that we will split amongst the TSC members. We'll split various working groups for the TSC members. So we've already done that. Most of us have picked up the working groups, and that's how we'll be focusing in the present year. There's one more thing which is the most important to get started with 2023, the baseline roadmap. So the road mapping activity has kicked off, and we are all working on our respective suggestions and inclusions on the roadmap, and that will hopefully get finalized in the first half of January, if not by the end. So that's on the that's two very important activities going on. And of course, I said in the beginning also that there's a blog initiative that we recently introduced, and that's going to be a fairly regular affair going forward. So I would like let Andreas, who's the author of the first blog, to talk a little more about the first one and more to come. And also, Andreas, you can follow on that with the standards group update as well.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you, Samrat. So the first blog is talking about the digital business trilemma, right? You can only have two of three: decentralization, security, or performance. And since decentralization for your business applications is out of your hands, because any webcam in the world can hit your network at any time with whatever they want, and that is only increasing. I think we're now at 15 billion, and we're doubling every 3 years. So that is my favorite comparison is the case of the lake with the water lilies, right? That double every day. When you start at 1%, you only start to know on day 4 that there are a lot of water lilies around. On day 7, the entire lake is covered. That's the insidious nature of exponential growth, which we are seeing in the IoT space or the device space. Generally speaking, you just have to ask yourself, how many devices do you have at home, and how many more are you using as you move around? So that's only going to increase. And if you think that your car only counts as one device, think again. So with that in mind, we can only look at optimizing security and performance. We have to have a trade-off, right? Either do we do security, or are we doing performance? So therefore, we need to take the approach of thinking, well, maybe we are going into trust networks, small trust networks that are operating in the open, but under zero trust and under zero knowledge. Hence, the approach that the baseline protocol is taking, which is around zero trust and for multi-party coordination under zero knowledge. So we're constraining decentralization, which allows us to improve performance and security. So that's the thrust of the blog, is positing this trilemma, explaining it, and showing how the baseline protocol can actually help solve that trilemma, at least in certain instances. So that is that. Any questions on that?
Well, good. Thank you, Andreas, for leading by example. Actually, you proposed the idea and also executed the first blog. So kudos to that.
And every TSC member is publishing a blog this year. So kudos to that. And the TSC is TSC members also now have focus areas. So we'll be able to hold each other's feet to the fire and have more responsibility and accountability on the TSC, which is great.
On respective areas, yeah. So let's just also take this opportunity to describe, what these focus areas are. So So there's maintainers group, there's outreach group, there's grants, there's research, there's roadmap. Of course, all of us are involved there. There's standards, and there is, there's this extra bit which we felt the need to introduce, which is collaboration with other standard development organizations. So a lot of good work is happening, for example, within Oasis itself, and there are other standards being developed, which could potentially be. Hey.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Well, I thought I was cutting out again. Somebody was saying it. So yeah, that's something which we are also doing. And yeah, there is tons of exploration to be done this year. I'm very excited about it. And if anybody has any ideas from the community, please do hop on to the Slack channels, find us there, or join one of our working groups and start contributing. Thank you very much. Andreas, back to you on the standards update.
Yeah, thank you. Standards working group. So we added 3 new editors this year, which is great, because now we have we can divvy up the work better, because we have also done some great editing work. Thank you, Joe, Keith, and Mark, for that. But the big heavy lifting that we have to do to get to the draft status is coming now. The PGB finally published actually the specification process to go through, and the requirements, even though there are still some open questions. But we will basically have to go through all 3 standards and ensure that every requirement is testable. And we need to also add internationalization and localization requirements where appropriate, or not requirements, but considerations. So there's now that we know that is required. There's some additional work that is coming up in Q1 for the editors. The goal is to get to draft status by the end of Q1 of next year, so that we can then that will also align with finishing the SRI. So then hopefully we'll be able, with 2 reference implementations in place, be able to move it to full project specification status, either by the end of Q2 or Q3 of next year. So those are the tasks at hand for the next year and the outlook. So if everything goes well, we'll have the baseline protocol standard will be a full spec sometime next year.
That's super cool. Thank you, Andreas, for those updates. And yeah, we wish to see this being taken to fruition and to adoption by getting those letters of adoption. Letters of adoption, this is right. I recently saw Oasis updates about another standard going live, where they were publishing letters of adoption, something like that. Cool. I would now like to invite Sonal for the updates on grants.
Yes, thank you. So I'm just going to give some brief updates right now. In our January General Assembly, I will share a retro deck that I'm working on, as well as we will publish a blog similar to last year to cover the main grant work of the year. So we'll kind of save updates for that, but I do want to thank our grant recipients from this year. We just wrapped up the website maintenance grant, where Boy helped us transform our website this year and has been maintaining it and setting it up in a way for our community to keep it updated for years to come. Vibov's baseline calendar work is in the repo. The code, demo videos, and all the resources can be found there. And we're also working on a blog to wrap up that work. Earlier this year, Samrat and Jack helped us host Amster-based, our first baseline event at DevConnect. And we also had Boris represent baseline at Lend It FinTech. Mark spoke at FinTech DevCon, and Samrat just recently represented us at ETH Vietnam. So we had a lot of events this year and members speaking about baseline in the community. Samrat also hosted our baseline show, as we know. And then, of course, we have our Simple Reference Implementation Group, also known as BRI3, that is getting a large chunk of grant funds this year for their hefty development work. I'd also like to thank the donors, the Ethereum Foundation and Consensus Mesh for making the open source work possible this year. We're going to send requests out for further donations next year for our 2023 grant pool, as well as any companies out there who are interested in funding the work can also reach out to make a contribution to the grant funds. And then also I will briefly cover sponsorship since Carol from Oasis isn't here. We had some questions on the Twitter that I wanted to address about sponsor changes. And although I cannot speak on behalf of Oasis, I did want to say that unfortunately, Chainlink's sponsorship renewal was not done this year. They did not renew their sponsorship. And although we are sad, this is a common thing to happen for organizations that join standards open source projects, especially towards the end of the year when they're reviewing their upcoming budgets. So although they are not an official baseline sponsor for this upcoming year, we are still an open source project, meaning anyone from sponsoring or non-sponsoring organizations can take part in all of the work that we do. And the sponsorship benefits include having a seat on the project governance board. It allows you to be listed on the Get Baselined page and some other benefits. And we hope to have some new sponsors announced at the beginning of 2023. So I hope that answers any questions, and let me know if on Slack or anywhere else if you have further questions. And that is it for my updates.
Excellent. Thank you, Sonal. And yeah, being a sponsor actually brings in a lot of love from our side as well. You keep the initiative going, keep the ship sailing. There is this mentions that we do. So you keep hearing a lot of time that we're reaching out, we're representing baseline in various events. So the sponsors get a mention from our side in each of these events as well. So that's something which comes along with it. And yeah, there's one more additional. I think we made that change sometime last year, but worth mentioning that you can become a sponsor for the entire initiative, or you can also start sponsoring specific grants. So you can also come in and just say only a small amount of that grant is going to go to baseline maintenance. Most of it is just going to be given out as that grant. So if you're an organization who's looking for solving one specific problem and do not want to sponsor the whole initiative, then also you can come participate. So do get in touch, and we are always looking for more sponsors to join us, contribute, not just money, but also resources, more brain power and more ideas can be anyways. Thank you so much. These are some very interesting updates, and I'm particularly excited about 2023 because I think we're going to see a lot of real corporate stuff happening here, and yeah, really excited about it. So I'm going to go. I'm going to go quickly over the year-end wrap up. So as I said, I'm very, very thankful to the sponsors who made everything possible this year. We also had four sponsors for the Amsterdam-based event, which was our maiden event, and we're all very emotionally as well as technically, intellectually invested in that event. Went very well. So yeah, we had some real good highs for the baseline community, and I really appreciate everybody who's put in their blood and sweat into what is happening. And yeah, I also saw a lot of SRI work coming out. That was something really powerful. It's something which gives us that grounding to go talk to more sponsors, talk to more organizations to start adopting baselining. And yeah, this is we had 19 code dev calls. I think that's something which I'm told. I don't attend the code dev calls yet, but and then there are several other meetings that we do every week, every 2 weeks, and we do these baseline shows. We got some really exciting people on the baseline shows. I'm going to publish a blog in January about the baseline shows as well, that the kind of support we got here, and what is coming. So there are these format changes that we are planning. There are these different sections we're going to talk about, the standard requirements, etc. So all of that coming really soon, so do watch out for that. And yeah, let's open the floor to hear more about from the community what everybody is doing. We also have Anant here today, so maybe on the open floor, Anant could go first, and then anybody else. Hey, Anant, if you're not on camera, you won't be visible. Yeah, we see you.
Okay, Samrat, let me pull the window to the right screen. I'm sorry, you were asking me for an update, or
Enough, you look like you're somewhere warm.
I was somewhere warm. I was in Texas 2 days ago, but now I'm back in Minneapolis, just looking out to a lot of white rooftops, So yeah, like 2.5 hours, between Texas and Minnesota makes a lot of difference, I guess. So I guess you're back at home. Yeah. Okay. So Samrat, I'm sorry, you were asking me for an update, or?
No, not an update. Just anything that you're working on, and your recent article as well.
Oh, yeah,
We were
of
all
course.
very impressed with that article, and if you would like to talk more about those ideas that you expressed there.
Yeah, so the article was about Chat GPT, right? It's been generating quite a bit of conversation. It's quite interesting. I mean, it does have a lot of capabilities for all sorts of things, right? For instance, I gave it a few tests, right? I fed it like abstracts of some of my academic papers, and asked it, some questions about the papers, right? So it was able to actually connect to some whatever kind of data it has access to, supposedly a lot of data, and come up with intelligent answers for the most part. Very impressive, right? I never thought I would see a general purpose AI do this. But
Yeah.
of course, there's a lot of things as well. I mean, if you are not an expert in that subject, I mean, you're not going to know what is valid and what's not. I even, to give you an example of the latter, kind of issues, right? I scrubbed references of one of my papers, right? I mean, part of one of my papers, and asked it to come up with references. This is because there was this other AI guy who had, demonstrated that it was generating spurious references, right? So it came out with, I asked it to generate references in Harvard style, right? And it generated perfectly formatted references, but completely fake. And that was quite an incredible capability as well. I mean, as dangerous as it is, it was also quite amazing that it could do it, and what's actually going on, right? So it is a groundbreaking thing, but and it's here to stay, right? Because it definitely will give a lot of like, I knew a lot of startups that were trying to look at contracts and then big project contracts, right? And pull out data that is relevant, right? Those kind of startups, for instance, have to rethink how they are doing these things, right? I was able to generate legal contracts with a single sentence. I said, okay, generate this interconnection contract, for the solar industry, right, between these parties, and it generated a contract that my wife, who is a attorney in that sector, she was quite impressed with, right? Just one line is all it. But obviously, you do need to have an expert to know whether whatever is being generated is valid or not. But the fact that it could do it is quite an incredible kind of capability. So it's here to stay. I mean, I've also had it to generate code. A lot of devs might have been playing around with that. I mean, it has impressive capabilities. You need to be a developer though to interpret the code. You just can't But it's here to stay. I think we all need to understand what its capabilities and limitations are, because it's going to be part of our future, right? Andreas might have something to say about that, but I'll wait for him.
Yeah, I was playing with it today, and I was telling you when before we started the show that I don't feel like closing that tab on my laptop. It's like it's so you're so hooked onto it, and it can do so many things. It's and at some point it said Samrat, you're going too fast. Too many requests. Stop with that.
Their user base has grown, rapidly grown, right? There's millions of, I think they reached like that 10 million user, whatever, in a record amount of time. And another thing, I guess, one of that article, one of the general observations that I had was, one of my many abortive attempts to start a PhD, I had an admission at the University of Oxford. My advisor was Professor Luciano Floridi, who's a famous kind of expert he's a philosopher and an expert on AI ethics, right? So like if you see these kind of conversations, I mean, we're debating the nature of, consciousness and what is general purpose AI, what is the nature of, but I don't think these things are going to matter because it's just going to be put to use. We will be debating these things for like years to come. We want, have a good answer, but the capabilities are growing where it will be deployed before we get anywhere close to these answers, right? So that was one of the arguments that I had in that article.
And then this is going to generate arguments for itself,
Yeah, and those articles, I mean, the
That's
big
how it
arguments
learns.
we're not close to resolving it, but the uses.
That's how it learns, Samrat.
Yeah.
It's a chat GPT, so GPT 3.0 is a GAN. It's a general adversarial network, right? Yeah, so it's like you think Twitter was bad?
Yeah, this thing it can generate stuff. I mean,
the problem is this is from a societal point of view. This is like exponentially more dangerous than Twitter.
Yeah,
you can generate any information. It's completely fake. You cannot. It sounds legit. You can maliciously flood a Twitter with this kind of stuff. Any social media platform. It is already in the arsenal of state actors. Has already been for years, right? So one of the things in times of crisis, real crisis, not Ukraine crisis. That doesn't count as real crisis. It is, but it's not, right? Is massive disinformation campaigns. Subtly
weaponized communications,
subtly growing. The FSB has been using this type of technology for years in its Twitter troll farms, right? So it's as with all technology, it's dual use. The problem is that people don't understand it. They don't understand the limitation. Definitely not general purpose AI. It's definitely doesn't have a conscience. Right? Because if it did, it's a very simple test. If it did, it would say, I don't know, instead of giving you an answer. Right? So it's like that's the simplest test. Right?
Yeah,
if it gives you I don't know, then then it makes the next step. If you ask it something, if you make a statement and it responds, it's not there's no sentience in there. And it's not, and it will not be for a few more decades. It's just not possible. Okay, it's just computationally impossible. Period.
But it's going to be put to use. I mean, and it's already being put to use. That's
the problem is that people don't understand it, and therefore it will be abused. And abuse is much easier to do than positive usage for it.
Just
Yeah.
ask
Right.
FPS.
I mean, college students will love it, right? I mean, they
Yeah,
can
totally.
finally write, finally have well written
Even if it's
papers
about
that
rubbish,
are not
right?
plagiarized.
Yeah.
Even if
Yeah,
it's
and
not
it's
perfect.
if it's not plagiarized, and it will that's going to be the biggest problem for colleges. Anyway,
Well, and
So
having
so I
gotta
saw
hop.
I saw this thing say I don't know today itself, and I was just going to I'm just referring back to it. Said I'm sorry, but I'm not familiar with the concept of, and Anand, that was also thanks to you. It is coming from one of your posts only, which was the random bullshit generator on Web3. So I picked up some of the words from there and I felt it. And it says I'm sorry, but I'm not familiar with the concept of non-fungible dark nodes in the context of blockchain technology.
You're the
And then
bullshit
went on,
generator.
yeah, with the bullshit generator. And then it went on to say that blockchain technology and just describing what blockchain technology is. So
and
it said, I don't know. And then in the end, it said, would you want to give me some more context about this subject?
so do we want to, again, is it going to be a Blade Runner test to find out, is this real? Is this a human or is this a bot? You're going to have that.
Yeah, that's the Turing test, right? I mean, if you have an interaction between a human, and that's a very subjective thing, and I do wonder how far. It doesn't matter whether how close we are to general intelligence or not. I think that's a far way away. But can it pass a Turing test, right? I think it's not that far from passing a Turing test, and that's why the thing about it is the subjective experience, not so much like what it really is, but what it means to humans, right? I mean, how soon can someone find out that they're not interacting with a human, right?
Right, absolutely. This is all very interesting. I think we are beyond time for today's show, so I think we need to wrap up. And these are very interesting chats, by the way. We should continue this. The next baseline show, we're going to be bringing back C4, and we're going to be talking. We're going to be taking a episode 2 of ZK 101. So anybody who's interested in brushing up their concepts on ZK, do join in. And yeah, hopefully we'll all leave the next episode as well, very, very enlightened about CK concepts and where it is getting applied. Thank you so much, Anand, for making it to today's show. Any final closing comments, or are we good?
I think we're good.
Next,
Yes, we are.
next show, or ZK one of things,
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone who tuned in today, and see you next week. Our call for speakers is always open, so please keep tagging people. Please do send us emails or chats about any speaker references that you can give us. Thank you.